Josh, I was telling Will before you got in the room that I just got done with a two weeks worth of fire service class, which means I was working 8 to 4-ish. And
that's a rough schedule, man.
I can tell you folks, firemen are just not cut out for this 9 to 5 thing. I mean, I felt like
we're not built for it.
I feel like I just built a pyramid. I mean, I am exhausted after going into work. I mean, by like day 4 or 5 in the week, I just could not believe that the average person works every single day. But I'm pumped to be here. 312, ready to roll. I'm going to pop it right now. Will, we're ecstatic to have you on this week. Thanks for coming.
It sounds like you bear quite a cross this week, man. These last 2 weeks, we all feel for you. All these poor people that probably all work 8 to 5 jobs and just want to strangle you for having heard that you can't handle 2 weeks of it.
Well, the thing is, like when a career firefighter tells people what they do for a living, the presumption is that it sounds really difficult. Like, oh my God, you work 24 hours. What they haven't computed is we get like 265 days off a year. So hopefully none of you are taxpayers in our jurisdiction. But yeah, Josh, I'm going to be happy to
Dan,
be
I feel like
back on shift.
You're just painting a really, really nice picture of it. It can get real sideways, but it's mostly great.
It can.
It's mostly great.
Will, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. As you said, one hell of a week. I have nothing on you, but I just sat through an 8-hour course a week ago for learning how to take care of a baby in its first couple hours. And so that was the first time I had to actually be basically chained to a chair, focus on something that was going to be meaningful. And I came out of that. I think I needed like a 2-day recovery simply from that. So I feel for you there.
Are you having a baby, or what was the impetus behind the training there?
Yeah, that's it. Coming up maybe in, God willing, about 1 month from now. So
very cool.
Wow. Countdown
life,
is on.
as you said, you asked me how's life going? How's this last week? I'm like, wow, where do I even begin?
We thought maybe you were just preparing for any kind of emergency at the Fold headquarters. You never know.
Exactly it. Well, that's an everyday
we delivered a baby today at Fold. Yeah.
Your first, Will?
Yeah, this is number 1. So going from 0 to 1 here.
It's a big step.
It's a big step. So I don't know where you guys are at on that journey, but
we're each at 2. And just prepare yourself to get a diaper genie so that your house doesn't smell like crap all the time. It's a good first step. Those things are great. And try to change as few diapers as you can possibly get away with. That's my advice.
I'm owning that skill. I'll come to you for some hints after.
Yeah. Most parents are like, oh, you have a couple kids, it teaches you to be unselfish. I think it just teaches you to be more selfish, but in a smarter, slyer way. Right, Josh?
Yeah. I didn't wake up. I didn't hear it. I don't know what you're talking. The baby was up twice last night. I didn't hear it. That's the play.
Well, why don't we start here? This is such a massive week in so many capacities. It's kind of hard to put ourselves in someone's shoes that works in this industry full time. Why don't you just kind of we're here to listen, unpack whatever you want, vent. Where's your headspace on this Friday?
Oh, man.
How long should he go to jail? How long should he go to jail?
I cannot believe that he's not even in cuffs right now. It's pretty impressive how this whole thing is going down. And at the end of the day, this industry has always been like this. Feels a little bit like Groundhog Day. The problems are the exact same that we face. The instability is there, but it gets bigger and bigger. The magnitude, the scope gets orders of, it just gets to a whole nother place. And the thing that is most, that I sometimes pause about in like a week like this is how much bigger it got than it was before. And then before that. And you always think, okay, we're on the precipice of, mass adoption, or we've gotten to the next level, and you just get surprised because you're working on this every single day, and the changes are kind of minute. You're shipping products, the shitcoiners around you are doing what they're doing. You're just heads down, just trying to build. And these moments where it all comes tumbling down, it says, oh shit, this is a whole new environment. And so it feels familiar. But it is the stakes are much higher. So like you look at Fold right now, and this is supposed to be a bad time for everybody. Fold's numbers we're hitting record spend. Last week on Tuesday, we paid out on 14 Bitcoin, $250,000
Wow.
in Bitcoin yesterday or on Tuesday. Normally we'll do about 4 Bitcoin because people are like, hey, we'll keep it on Fold, just going to keep earning. It's hard to underestimate how much of a psychological effect this has had on everyday people. And the best part is, I think ultimately, besides the fallout from this immediate thing where real people are getting hurt bad and people who had good intentions, this is not all just affecting, degen traders who knew that they were playing with fire. There's real people who are on the end of this. And
for sure.
And for most people, it's just like, who's your buddy who's telling you, about this world? And sometimes that buddy's, not bringing you down the right pathway. Sometimes it's what podcasts are you listening to? The Blue Collar Bitcoin podcast? Are you listening to Pump? And very easily people can go down a path. And when the going is good, when bull times are here, everything is happy, everything is positive, and you can get over your head. And so for us, it looks to be an amazing time, growing faster than ever. People are learning about self-custody, something that we've been trying to educate on forever. And, this moment has done more for that than I'd say that the sum total of all our education efforts over the past, 3 years, which
for sure
kind of it puts into perspective of how mass adoption really might happen.
Yeah. I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, you've heard all these old OG Bitcoiners say, not your keys, not your coins. And people take that for granted in a certain way, especially since it's been what has it been? 7 years or 8 years since Mt. Gox. Like, it's been a long time since we've seen some shit hit the fan like this. And there's been an entire, almost like 2 different generations of Bitcoiners. And, we grow it's like dog years in Bitcoin. So This is 2 generations removed from Mt. Gox. And people are now relearning this lesson. And it's a smaller amount of Bitcoin here. What was it, like 70,000 or so that were affected by this, I guess, or the equivalent of that, compared to like 400,000 or 500,000 at Mt. Gox, but the dollar amount is massively higher. So depending on how you're going to compare it, this is probably much worse than Mt. Gox. And especially because it's all mainstream people that got affected by this for the most part. It's not just some weirdo libertarian sitting in their basement, playing Dungeons and Dragons and collecting Bitcoins or however from a fountain. But it is a very different situation. It's so much more mainstream these days.
You look at, you just said the amount of Bitcoin is less, but, also the scale that the whole kind of DeFi shitcoin industry grew also took so much time, resources, and effort away that also was lost in that. And now that's something that we were calling from day one. This is all going to evaporate. But all of that, there's another world where that value is flowing into Bitcoin. And, we chose a different path. But unfortunately, the money, we just went through one of the large, this is not just a Bitcoin bear market problem right now. This is a total macroeconomic, thing happening. And so VC money coming in, absolutely pouring in records amount of venture capital being raised and immediately dumped into the market. That's going to give you the fastest time to liquidity and the easiest way to manipulate and dump on retail. And that was such a powerful incentive for so much money. It's hard to even understand how much money was going into these projects that were from the day one vaporware and understood exactly what they were doing. And for being a Bitcoin company, this has implications that even in the bull market, it's not easy to raise money. People are, when they look at you, they're like, well, okay, they'll look at your company and they'll look at, another company who's playing around the DeFi or, shitcoin space. You just look at the growth charts or the balance sheets or anything like that. It's not, you can't compete because we're not able to print our own money out of nowhere. But they'll look at this opportunity and just say, hey, my money is going to go for where I can get the fastest turnaround on my money. And it was always a really difficult, thing to solve in terms of accessing capital. But it's hard to underestimate how amazing the incentives were for this industry that was built on, essentially sand. And it was built so what we're seeing now is we just saw like 6-7 months ago, we saw just the tip of the iceberg start to crash down. And now, things with Genesis today, like at the very core of where all this was going on is now being, called into question. GBTC, which is the original thing that was creating the arbitrage opportunities for a lot of this yield that was coming out. And so, again, we've seen this again, like there's each generation has to learn from it. The problems get bigger. But at the end of the day, I think more than anything, like you start to just, as a Bitcoin company, you have to protect yourself, right? You learn to build a company in a low time preference way. You understand that money is not going to be easy to get at all times. You understand the Bitcoin value of Bitcoin, and your treasury being in Bitcoin is going to go up and it's going to go down in a cycle. You understand that outside money is going to come in, it's going to dry out. And so you really build your company from the ground up, having to already harden into these cycles so that you can make it through the other side. And so, this is why a lot of these companies now that you see are thriving. It's because, you really have to make real decisions. Where do you put your treasury? Where are you putting your user funds? What partners are you signing up? And every single one of those will either increase your risk or allow you to weather these storms. And what ultimately we're seeing now with this all these Bitcoin companies thriving in this moment is that truly they made the right decisions. They built companies that were able to weather these storms and thrive at the very time that the entire market is going down.
Yeah. You talked about, before we got into this, we talked a little about your origin story. Tell us the story, number one, about starting Fold, how it got to the point where you were traveling the country, living in your car, and then even get into the part where you actually put this thing on hibernation for a period of time in order to wait for an opportune moment for it to pounce back into the market without having to regress into some shit coinery or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Give us the whole story.
Geez. So, I grew up in the Bay Area in the Sonoma Valley, moved down, went to school in the Bay, and, I just love building. I love building things in the open. And that, really was the ethos of that area for a very long time. And so I immediately got into it, found that, hey, this is where I want to spend my time, is building things, introducing new technologies, things that can kind of, unlock new powers for everyday people. And so I was really in startup land. I had a couple startups, and along that way, working actually a fiat job, I ran into a friend who was started a company that allowed you to essentially buy Bitcoin with gift cards. And I was already into Bitcoin. I had a couple really amazing experiences with Bitcoin, 2014, where I met this guy or so, and he had a company that's called Card for Coin, and that allowed you essentially an exchange that allowed you to buy Bitcoin in this way with gift cards and peer-to-peer, no KYC. It was pretty incredible what was going on. It was still very early, and so we kind of developed a relationship, and working fiat, got there, and at the end of the day, like, my soul wasn't really in it. I was constantly searching for something that I was going to be building that I actually cared about, that I actually gave a fuck about. And that's, I think, part of that's a hard journey that everyone has to go through, is finding that.
For sure.
And most people will never find that. And it came to a point where, I had some incredible interactions with some key Bitcoiners in the Bay Area, had been building myself in payments. And, I said to him, hey, man, I think we have the ability to come and build something. This is about the right time to go do it. Bitcoin is just this new money. This is back in magic internet money days, where it was something was like, it was getting on the radar of mainstream in a big way. It's like, hey, this is the problem here. We have this new type of money, but no one can use it. This is supposed to be peer-to-peer, decentralized money, but no one uses it. No one can accept it. And so I ended up jumping on. We spun out the company and kind of changed it a little bit so that you could spend Bitcoin and essentially spend it, buy a gift card to then go to Starbucks, things like that. And we just did a small kind of test of this, and it kind of took off at the beginning. It was really used by OGs, whales, people who are already on Get on Zero back in 2014, 2015.
Imagine
people
that.
who were miners, who were actually just getting paid on Bitcoin, already living in the circular economy. And so we had it was at Boost VC in the Bay Area. In that same office was like Casa was building in their early days. Bitrefill was there, some early wallets, super scrappy, very early days. And, our thing was like, hey, let's make it usable. And so we used kind of gift card arbitrage, allowed you to spend your Bitcoin in the real world to kind of give you that moment. Hey, this is a real thing. People can exchange it for goods and, create this, new experience on top of Bitcoin. And so we were doing that for a while, and it was, doing great. Number one, Bitcoiners loved it. We have some extremely OGs out there who who have gift cards that they bought on Fold back then, that are now worth like $10,000, $20,000, $5 Starbucks cards, just really wild stuff. And they wear it like a badge of honor. It's like an OG. It's like
yeah, it's like buying a couple of pizzas for 20,000 Bitcoins or whatever it was.
That was it. And that was always, a part of it. It's like back in those days, you just weren't thinking like that. No one was really thinking about like a little bit. There was a segment of people, but ultimately like Bitcoin's use case was really figure it out. Let's use it. Let's understand what it was. Like digital gold, that was a niche idea even back then. And so, where we got to is that we got hit by these cycles. We got hit by our first, Bitcoin bear markets. And we said, okay, times were good. Big prices up. People are spending their Bitcoin, miners spending their Bitcoin, everyone living on it. And then we hit these kind of bear cycles. And then all of a sudden usage just falls flat because it goes completely down. Business, every number is looking absolutely horrible. We don't know how long these things are going to last. And so we, really had to rethink what this model was. And in that time was when you started to get this massive explosion of all these other shit coins. Like it was like, you had a couple coming at first, and then all of a sudden, literally every day, some new was being launched. And it was like, wait, what is this? Not everyone understood what side it was. There wasn't that true unethical understanding. A lot of people were using it like just tinkering, like, oh, I can launch a coin. I can launch a coin. And
what year are we in right now, by the way? What year are we in at this point?
This has got to be about 2016 or so. Okay. 2016 or so. And we then are in this point where we have a bear market. There's no money coming into Bitcoin venture capital. No one's starting, no one's funding. At that point, up until that point, the people who were funding startups in Bitcoin were Roger Ver, Draper, and it was like a small group of like OG whales that were really doing it. If you look at the early Bitcoin cap tables, it's just early Bitcoiners essentially, and like a couple VCs like a Draper. And then the bear market came, cycles ran up, Bitcoin's dead everywhere. This whole song and dance we do, and but there was something different this cycle. It's holy shit! Somehow there's all this new money flushed into the space to all these other altcoin projects that is everywhere. So you're getting Dash, you're getting Bitcoin Cash. Everything is just absolutely flooding the market, and they have a ton of money. They're printing money. And so they're the only ones who have it. And so they could come over to a lot of these early Bitcoin companies, throw a check across, the table that would save your company and let you keep operating, but you're going to integrate, CoinX, whatever the hell it was at the time. And, for Fold, we were in this thing of like, hey, where's our product market fit? Where's this whole thing going? What are these new? It wasn't really clear exactly what the right option was. And so at that time, we decided to say, hey, we need to, we're going to just shut down because we are not going to take this money right now. We had, Roger Ver was on Fold's cap table. And I've emails from him like screaming at us to add Bitcoin Cash to this. And for the whole thing, it just is like, number one, this feels so different from why we're all here. Number two, the utility is completely unclear. And, it was, again, anytime you're integrating something, we take our user experience seriously. Every time something is introduced on the Fold platform, like I believe it, I stand behind it, and my team does. And none of us were able to stand up and say, yeah, we think this is the right thing to do. And so even in that murky environment, we just, had to stick to first principles and say, hey, the best thing to do right now is reevaluate, and we're going to shut Fold down, and we're going to rethink, our options.
It makes me think of the fact that in some ways, ethical behavior can paint you into a sort of intellectual corner. Like if we were to take our small project here, we've been spouting off now for a year and a half about strong convictions we have from first principles about what really matters in this space. And in so doing, we've cultivated an audience that's critical, that thinks for themselves, that's well-researched. So if the two of us were to start spouting off some bullshit next week and taking easy money, let's say, from a really shitty sponsor or clearly violating what we've stood for a year and a half, we would probably face the consequences. Like a lot of our audience would exit.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the same is probably true for where you were at. You'd built such a cool product and such a useful product for so many hardcore plebs that if you had sold out like that, it very well might have been the undoing of your company, even if it didn't feel that way short term. Does that resonate at all?
Man, it does in some ways, and others it's a slightly more complicated, because back then a lot of the OGs ended up being some of the the more famous shitcoiners you've known.
Interesting. Yeah.
A lot of the early people cycled out, got absolutely, wealthy on with Bitcoin, said, hey, I'm the smartest person in the room. I know exactly what to do next. Not understanding that it was actually more of a factor. They got lucky, right time, right place. And they forgot where that came from. And so we had a lot of people, even on our cap table, are saying, no, we need to do this. We had even users who were then going and starting other projects. And this is at the time when, it's amazing to look now, like adopting Bitcoin happening in El Salvador. This is the time when you had things like Dash blanketing, random Latin American cities with billboards of that, that Dash is taking over this Latin American country, becoming the, taking people out of poverty and giving them freedom money. And there was this whole smoke and mirrors about how successful it really is, or is it successful or not? Like, do you have people send down there and say, hey, most merchants that have Dash stickers on the door said someone just went and put that sticker on the door. They don't even know what Dash is. And it was all these mind tricks. And part of it was because it was all marketing campaigns. It was all marketing campaigns to get more retail interest or to get more venture capital interest coming in. For
sure.
And so it wasn't that clear. And so for us, it's like, okay, if we do start accepting Dash, we're going to open up our addressable market massively and actually start giving utility to people. So it wasn't entirely clear, but we did know something wrong was happening. Something, in the space was moving so fast that there wasn't enough time for real critical understanding of how to evaluate things. And so for us, like we were able to do our best because we're in the space. We're among a lot of people building. It's like, hey, I think we had a better finger on the pulse than most would at the time. And that's part of the reason why it allowed us to say, we're committed to Bitcoin for a very clear reason. These projects don't match up to why we're in this space at all. And so they didn't solve our problem.
BCB is brought to you by Crowd Health. With open enrollment upon us, what if you didn't have to pay healthcare premiums anymore? What if you could invest in Bitcoin instead? With Crowd Health, you can put money aside for health expenses in your own account and even hold a large part of it in Bitcoin. If Bitcoin goes up, you get the upside, not big insurance companies. Pay one low monthly total to fund an account that is yours. Choose your doctors and hold up to 75% of the funds in Bitcoin. If a large expense comes up, Crowd Health will crowdfund the bill for you to pay it quickly. Stop supporting the broken health insurance system with your hard-earned capital. Go to joincrowdhealth.com and use code BLUE now to experience freedom from health insurance by utilizing Bitcoin. Right now, through the end of the year, you can get your first 6 months for just $99 per month. Don't get stuck in a bad insurance plan again. Instead, go to joincrowdhealth.com and use code BLUE to sign up. That's joincrowdhealth.com, promo code BLUE. Crowd Health is not health insurance. It's a totally different way of paying for healthcare. Terms and conditions apply.
Blue Collar Bitcoin is sponsored by Capital Logistics. Capital Logistics is a freight broker connecting truck drivers and shipping partners around North America. A true blue-collar business that supports Blue Collar Bitcoin. Capital Logistics specializes in moving temperature-controlled cargo, food, supplies, and other freight nationwide for some of America's largest companies. Capital Logistics is a firm believer that people and businesses should be able to save what they earn without having their purchasing power manipulated by the financial system. As early adopters of innovative systems throughout their business, Capital's excess cash flow is put into Bitcoin every month. If you want to work with a company that shares blue-collar values and an affinity for Bitcoin, reach out to Capital Logistics today. Find them online at capitallogisticsllc.com. That's capitallogisticsllc.com.
The Blue Collar Bitcoin podcast is powered by arguably the most legendary company in Bitcoin, CoinKite. Use promo code BCB for 5% off select purchases, including the cold card, at coinkite.com. Established block 141,000, CoinKite is an industry leader in security and hardware manufacturing. They are producers of the renowned Cold Card, the world's most trusted and secure Bitcoin signing device or hardware wallet. It's built with a plethora of features fit for Bitcoin beginners all the way up to the most advanced of users. This device is a one-stop shop for your Bitcoin custody needs. CoinKite also manufactures the Block Lock, a gorgeous e-ink digital art display piece sitting in the background of every serious Bitcoiner on planet Earth. Block Clock can be programmed to scroll through key Bitcoin metrics including price, hash rate, the next halving date, and much more. CoinKite are also the makers of the Open Dime, a small USB stick that allows you to spend Bitcoin like a dollar bill, passing it along multiple times. Check out CoinKite's entire suite of products at coinkite.com. Now back to the show.
Yeah. One thing that you said that really resonates with me is the whole marketing aspect of these shitcoin projects. Back in 2017, when the two of us were introduced to all of this, I remember for some reason IOTA comes to mind. IOTA was this shitcoin that had all kinds of marketing BS. I'd go to their website and read the explanations as to what it's going to do, how it's going to make things better. And it's all these PhD puff pieces about, how this IOTA protocol is going to make things better. And just all of the fluff. I mean, it's so easy in retrospect to see it. At the time, I ate a lot of it up and was like, oh, this is, but then you look at these 100 other bullshit ICOs at the time. The same thing happened with DeFi and these NFTs in this cycle. It's hard to believe that, this has gone mainstream enough. I feel that hoodwinking everybody again with these same kind of games seems like it's going to get exponentially harder. But
I would hope. I mean, I would hope so, man.
I think it is. I could eat these words. This could be funny to listen back on, but Lynn Alden agrees, so I'll put my name on it. She was on with Peter this week, and she said...
We rubber stamp anything Lynn Alden says, by the way.
If there's anybody that can dupe the two of us, it's Lynn, by the way.
For sure.
Woman's got us by the balls. There's no doubt about it.
I'm sure.
She made this comment. She made this comment with Peter, which is she thinks that this could have been like peak clownsmanship just because of how many high-profile individuals and institutional money got hoodwinked here, and then also the onslaught of inevitable regulatory oversight that's coming. She said, it's hard to imagine that it gets this out of hand again, but man, who knows? Because when this host, we'll call Bitcoin the host and everything else the leech, right? That's really what it is. When the host just grows tremendously in size, there's so much blood to suck, at least in the short run, that when the hype comes, man, people lose their freaking minds. And if this thing performs anyway, the way I think it will, people are going to lose their minds again. There may just be more fences and more checks and balances next time.
Just on this topic.
I think that's right. I think we, you can kind of draw some corollaries with like the history of like penny stocks. For instance, a lot of that came down. A lot of shit was going on, right? Like there was wildcat banking. There was a lot going on. And there's also just these launch of these, like, who knows what these companies are that could be immediately listed on stock exchanges, and was just being dumped on retail in a time of, inflation and just absolute, madness that was going on. Very clown world stuff.
Yeah. Straight out of Wolf of Wall Street. We sell this to garbage men in the back of Hustler. That's exactly what just happened here.
Yeah. And so, at the end of the day, like penny stocks there's a very clear distinction between what that world is now. And that used to be kind of blended into everything. And it was, we might have hit that moment where, like, culturally it has sunk in. At the same time, you are going to get regulatory action where it is going to delineate a lot of, very real regulation around these things, where that could be enough to, at least put that part of clown world behind us. But, another one's coming.
Yeah. How do you see regulation playing out specifically for Bitcoin? You've got to be closer to the pulse of this than the two of us are, at least. How do you think how could the blowback from this affect Bitcoin in any real way, in your opinion?
At the end of the day, like Bitcoin's resiliency is absolutely incredible. Going back to the concepts of peer-to-peer with self-custody are two things that you can't really stop with Bitcoin at the end of the day. Regulations are going to come at the organizations being built on top, primarily like exchanges who hold custody for you. And, for a very real, in a very real way, those, third-party custodians, shitcoin casino exchanges, they did a very real, had a really real impact in expanding Bitcoin's adoption and introducing Bitcoin to a lot of people. Like they definitely have played that role. Now, I think you're going to see some actions around it about understanding that, hey, FTX had 0 Bitcoin, yet they were selling billions of dollars of Bitcoin. How does that work out? So you like that is just so ripe and obvious.
Wait, can we stop for? Let's talk about that for a second, because that's a point that came up that it kind of shocked me. So what do you think was let's just speculate here. Do you think that they were using some other intermediary where when somebody's withdrawing Bitcoin that they're just saying, hey, we need you guys to send over this Bitcoin. Here's a quick credit swap in order to get actual Bitcoin to the wallet of the person that's taking it off that exchange? How in the world were they giving Bitcoin to people if they had none?
They were either market buying Bitcoin when withdrawals were coming in, or enough Bitcoin was being deposited into the ecosystem that it was just being routed back out.
Or did they just siphon all of it out during the bankruptcy and just there was nothing left because they took it all?
That's the real thing, is that at the end of the day, what are the shitcoin casinos? What are the house of cards companies do? They, number one, try to liquidate their Bitcoin and get that out of the company fastest. They're not doing that with their own token. They're not doing that with their USD. They make sure there's no Bitcoin left in this carcass that's going to be taken up. So I think that's absolutely right.
Carcass.
And that's also just tells us where the value actually is held. And like at the end of the day, when the emperor has no clothes, they're trying to run off with the Bitcoin, none of the other thing else. Like that is why everyone's here. The thing about shitcoins is that really they're just a means for amassing more Bitcoin. They're either going to take away Bitcoin from you or help someone else get more Bitcoin. And at the end of the day, that's where it all flows back to.
Have either of you heard anything more about this hack? I'm just on this topic. The hack that guy got away with like $600 million. Has there been any other stones overturned on that? No,
I haven't. I've been in a fire service class all week, Josh. I haven't been able to read so books and articles while sitting at the fire station.
The velocity of shit is astounding this time.
Yeah, it's the velocity into the fan that is just, causing that exponential curve of shit blasting everywhere.
Well, and on this topic, I mean, this is what's so beautiful about Bitcoin. Like, it has no mercy, man. It's majestic, but also frightening in that, I forget who it was, Josh, we were texting about it, but maybe it was Caitlin Long that was talking about illiquidity and insolvency being
it was her.
2 totally different concepts. And there are no more than 19.2 million Bitcoin right now. And if you pretend to have more and people have a look at your balance sheet, it unravels not in weeks, not in months. It can unravel overnight.
Yeah.
And that's what's so ironic about this space is that it's the most radically transparent monetary system that's ever existed and probably ever will exist. But yet most of the big players were in some senses working on the exact opposite end of that spectrum with even more opacity than the current fiat monetary system. And I think my hope through this is that people really reconsider how this is done. And I think consumer expectation will completely change on the degree of transparency that's expected. At least I hope so.
Yeah, let's hope.
Well, while we're on this topic, let's now talk about Fold, because we're throwing mud at all the bad actors. What makes you folks different for someone that just got their BlockFi card just got bounced back the other week? What makes
Dude, they didn't even get their rewards. Dude, their rewards are fucking fugazi'd away now.
What makes the Fold card and Fold business model completely different than crypto clown world?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things when we started Fold and, a Bitcoin company, I think most of them take this approach is, number one, how are you aligning? I could spend my time mining a fiat job and buying Bitcoin, and I'd probably do very, very well just doing that. So why would you ever start a Bitcoin company with the tremendous risk that's not only there associated with a startup, but building on top of Bitcoin, which has historic, levels of volatility, and you're working on a project that is of historical significance that is not going to be an easy path, right? This is not we all know where we're ending. The path to get there is going to be hard, as we're seeing, every single day. Yeah. And so part of it was, I wanted to create a company that aligned with my values of, number one, I love to build shit and I love to put new things into people's hands that is genuinely going to improve their life. And I fundamentally agree Bitcoin is the single most important project that I could be spending my time and working on. You know, my first experiences with Bitcoin were so vast that showed me, how does this one tool able to solve so many problems for so many different people? I want to dedicate my intellectual and time to doing this. And so once you get to that stage of I can combine both of these aspects, it's, well, what type of business do you build on Bitcoin? Well, number one, the best businesses that you're going to create is, how do you create a business that's going to amass more Bitcoin? How does your business stack sats as well? And so, you know, we had this issue of like, hey, what is the problem we're going to solve? Well, you know, we started with the problem of, hey, let's help you spend your Bitcoin to make it real in the real world. But, you know, we talked about what happened in the market cycles. Use case kind of dried up in many ways. Bitcoin's own, our understanding of Bitcoin's place in our world also was evolving during that time. And, you know, we decided to resurrect Fold and say, hey, no, we've got to flip it. The problem is that not enough people are exposed to Bitcoin or have Bitcoin. We need to put Bitcoin in the hands of as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time. And so what we did was say, okay, let's look at how we can do that. And so we quickly, you know, we were already having people go to, Starbucks, spending their Bitcoin in the line. They said, hey, what if we just flip that? What if you could spend and earn Bitcoin back? It's already a thing that almost 90% of Americans alone are using, as some form of cash back. It's a way of passively stacking sats without having to necessarily take, the risk of your hard-earned money as you're learning about this asset. You don't need to get set up with a wallet necessarily to get started and understand what a seed phrase is. It seemed to be just the absolute perfect place to start at a perfect time when Bitcoin was coming out of this hibernation, or this world of niche, Mt. Gox, libertarian, internet culture, to actually breaking through in 2017 to be a thing that's actually being listed on MSNBC financial charts, or at least being talked about in a very big way, where this conversation about Bitcoin was coming to the dinner table. Like, what better product could we put in the hands of Bitcoiners to give to their mom, brother, sister, friends, than a way to passively earn this and see the power of Bitcoin? And so we developed that, and it just happened to have this benefit of, we can create a company that allows our users to stack sats passively without buying them, and we get to stack sats at the same time as them. The more they stack, the more we stack. There's complete perfect alignment and incentives this whole time. We don't need to launch a shitcoin. We don't need to do anything. All we need to do is believe that Bitcoin's adoption wave will continue as it is, and that Bitcoiners will do what they do best and be the incredible evangelists for this new wave. And we're just going to become one of the best tools for them to then impart to their friends and family to follow that adoption wave out. And so we kind of started at the very beginning. We knew we weren't solving the right problem. And it was in that click of just rethinking there that the business model became clear, the actual product became clear. And the first time we launched that thing, I remember getting to 10,000 users and being like, holy shit, we're onto something right. And that was, years ago at this point.
Something you just said resonates very strongly with me, especially after we just spoke to Andy Schoonover from Crowd Health. And we talked a lot about incentive structures and how Crowd Health has aligned themselves with their customer, the people that, that are using their sort of insurance, in order to perpetuate the best outcome for them and their customer. And you said the same thing just now, the alignment of incentives, which couldn't be more opposite of what FTX had going on. They were completely aligned against their customers. They robbed their customers. And so really, to me, it just kind of speaks to the incentive structure in Bitcoin is generally in alignment, especially with these companies, are all in alignment with their customers, and everyone's benefiting, versus this shitcoin circus of incentives being inverted and people getting destroyed. It really kind of struck me when you said that.
I mean, money overall, are, especially financial services and financial products, historically has always been an extremely extractive, parasitic relationship between people and their money. And Bitcoin is so amazing that it actually, for the first time, opens up these new incentives, these new ways of building not only a business, but a relationship with money that are mutually beneficial, that are not extractive, that are actually additive together. And so it it changes the entire calculus of building a business. And this is why you can look around and it's not that hard to see who the bad actors are. Follow the incentives, and you're going to be really clear. Who is encouraging you to custody your Bitcoin with them as a third party, and it'll give them to hold the keys. Number one, their incentives are not aligned with you already. They're just not aligned. And if they're not aligned now, they won't be aligned later. And that's what we're seeing a lot with these blow-ups, is like maybe some of them started genuinely to do something good. But again, once you have that power, and once that a possibility is there, incentives can go out of whack immediately. And so you can really look around, is that from a basic business level, you don't even need to see their balance sheets. You can just see how their business is taking in money, what the relationship is to their customer, and 90% you're going to be able to tell who's a bad actor and who's a good actor. And this is why it's so hard to be in the Bitcoin space, because as you said with your users, and it's true of building for Bitcoiners now, is that they are some of the most critical, don't trust, verify, I'm not going to leave any stone unturned, I'm going to run the numbers group. You can't get away with anything. And that is one of the best gifts to have as a content producer like yourselves, or as a builder, because that is what is going to make you sharper and sharper and sharper, and build a product that, number one, you can't build something that where incentives aren't aligned, because you're going to get hit by, you're going to get the backlash from it. But also, if you do stay true and you do stay principled, you get to ride the natural adoption cycle and adoption wave that is Bitcoin itself. Bitcoin's network effects is my marketing team. We don't spend money on marketing. Bitcoin is our marketing force. And as long as we stay true to that, we don't really have to do much except stay alive.
Dude, you're speaking our language in our little microcosm here of this podcast, which has been a blast and has gone, I guess the way it's progressed for us is different than we expected. And at the end of the day, it's all because of Bitcoin. We're just a couple firefighter clowns having discussions every week about this, but there's enough people around the globe. I mean, our listenership is not massive, but we're dispersed all over the world now. There's enough people intellectually hungry to listen to Bitcoin to waste an hour of their week with the two of us. And that has nothing to do with us. That has everything to do with the subject we're covering and the people that are building on it. I couldn't agree more. We're just riding a wave here.
You mentioned at the top of this that you guys were doing better than ever. Like, you were gaining more customers. You guys have more money being spent, more Bitcoin being given away to customers. So it's interesting to hear that. Can you go on a little bit about how you guys are performing throughout this bear market? Because I'm kind of curious how that coincides with like our download numbers, because we've been surprised that we haven't gone off a cliff, to be honest.
Right.
Because Bitcoin's been shit in the bed. Usually people lose interest and walk away for, the next year and a half. How have things been going for you?
Building on Bitcoin, like we said, ride that wave, continue to survive, and it'll go. But when you have a bull and a bear cycle, like, they're very different. Things are different in those different cycles. You have to have a different business and approach to the market during those cycles. You have to recognize when you're in one versus the other. In bull cycles, you need to be, everything you should do in a bear cycle is to prepare for the next bull cycle. You need to do everything you can to make your product as usable, as open, as available as possible, because you're just a funnel that needs to be as big. And if you're not big enough, they're falling out, going elsewhere. And so you just need to position yourself as best as possible. That's why Coinbase became Coinbase. Coinbase did not become Coinbase because it was necessarily, anything but. They were the most well-positioned and well-designed exchange at the right time. The flow of users into this space was coming anyway, and they were going to be pointed at one of these places chosen, and for whatever reason that ended up being Coinbase. And that was back when all the they were all casinos. Coinbase started with Bitcoin at one point. That's what they started with.
I mean, we remember the days where they were really, who was on there when we first started? Like, we remember when XRP got added and it was a huge deal. It was like when we got around to this space, it was like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. And I think that was it. I think they had
you're
three
right.
coins when we came to the dance. And now it's
that
changed
whole
so
thing,
much.
Everything in the late 2017 was like a Cambrian explosion of dog shit, just all over the place.
So you have your bull cycle. You need to do everything you can to prepare for that. And that your user numbers are going to be skyrocketing. You don't even have to do anything, and these numbers are just pumping every day. You're hitting records in terms of new users into the platform. Then you hit a bear cycle, and 100% you get a drop off because you're not getting people at every single dinner table. Every single conversation is not about this, and is not about, oh shit, you're not getting rich. I am. You need to download this or whatever. And that stops off. But what happens is the people that have been on your platform and have built it, they deepen their engagement with the platform. And so our new user numbers are not as high as they were during the last full cycle, the new user growth. But the actual engagement on the platform is higher than ever before. We have more spend coming through the platform, more engagement, more time, more people using us as their top of wallet, more referrals coming through. And you see it's because as people realize this, and that's, I think, a lot of the thing of when you're doing something right is that we're getting a lot of new people. You have a new person coming to your podcast. Like, the best possible outcome you guys could have with someone first time hearing you guys saying, I can't wait to listen to the next one. I learned something. I can't wait to listen to the next one, what these guys have to say or who's on the podcast. That's for us is I just learned the value of Bitcoin. Like, I just was, I was doing my normal purchasing, and my Bitcoin is now worth more than inflation actually happened. And now, like, some of my purchases have been paid for. Like, what is up with this money? Why is this money working differently than my fiat money? That gets you starting to ask questions. And that going down that rabbit hole ultimately just leads you to adopting our product more, others more, listening to more podcasts and more content. And we're getting more hardened users that are just now part of this ecosystem and ready to go deeper with you. And so, again, it's just knowing which one. And that's why I say bear cycles are for building. And that's right now, that's what you're seeing Fold do.
So a topic I want to spend some time with you, Will, on is just the payments industry in general, credit cards, intermediaries in the payment space, because you live in that area a lot. My first question, what does Visa say about the behavior of your cardholders? Like, what makes a Fold cardholder unique in their mind? Have you gotten calls or emails or had conversations through the years where they're like, what is going on with, because I'm assuming that the motivation and the impetus behind using this card of yours is very different than they're used to with Southwest credit card miles. Talk to us about the uniqueness of cardholder behavior, if there is any.
Yeah, I mean, most people have 4, 5, 6 cards in their pocket. When we look at the market, they spread their spend across various ones. They will try to game the system of the rewards, get the welcome bonus from one, use it, spend to the threshold, never use it again, drop it. And what they saw with Fold, number one at launch, was one of the fastest growing debit card programs ever launched, number one. And that was, holy shit. And most people didn't believe it. They didn't really understand what the opportunity was. I said, no, you don't understand. If we give people Bitcoin for just doing their spending, they will switch whatever card they're currently using to this card. As long as we don't screw this up, they will do that. And what they saw, one of the fastest growing and adopted cards ever that they have seen come out. And this was at the same time, we launched not too far around, Coinbase's card. We were actually the first Bitcoin rewards card out there. The second was, holy shit, people are not only buying coffees with this, but they're spending every single dollar that they have. And not only that, they're putting, business expenses through it. And we had insane things like, we had this one time we had a Visa needed to take a call. They're like, hey, we think something weird is going on with your program. We see these like $10,000 dinners happening on Fold, and we think this is not right. I'm like, well, you don't know Bitcoiners. We're in a bull market, and we have OG whales who've been using Fold forever who do that kind of craziness. And they're like, no, but you offer a debit card. No, wealthy people do not use debit cards. And I'm like, you're right, they don't. This is the first time they've ever seen that happen. And so they have seen from just the growth of the platform to the actual behavior and usage of it being kind of breadth of the spend to people who never used who are always on credit to now moving over to debit, spending within their means that they have or loading that. It just kind of had them rethink. And a lot of it is they're being introduced to Bitcoin culture and how their financial practices are different than people who are not necessarily far along with understanding high time versus low time preference and just generally Bitcoin culture overall. And so it was certainly something that we got. And that's not even to mention we have incentives on Fold. Like we said, let's make Bitcoin fun. Let's throw a wheel on that. Let's do all this. And that also led to a whole bunch of different things. You had construction workers who would sit in front of the taco truck and pay for everybody's meal, and then everyone would Venmo him cash because he wanted to just spin for this thing every single time. You had just absolutely crazy things that they were looking at this guy. We've never seen a prepaid debit card have this type of user base, this type of behavior. And I said, yeah, these are Bitcoiners.
Hey, so while we're on the topic of payments, you guys have kind of a workaround or an ingenious method for people to pay their mortgage payment using the Fold card. So I was in the app, I was looking around at something, and there was I haven't done it yet, but I've been planning to. Can you walk us through how you can pay your mortgage with a Fold card and get paid potentially 5% back in Bitcoin?
Yeah, this is I'd say this is the Fold. I think this is the stack hack of the absolute year. I mean, just to see the amount of Bitcoin that people have stacked on their biggest expenses. And
you got to want it.
You definitely got to want it. But at the end of the day, what we're at now? Like, people are beholden to terrible money. We have record inflation happening. We have a bunch of just absolutely shenanigans that they're being pushed into for investing, from Wall Street bets, GME stocks, to shit coins that are being promoted. And at the end of the day, if we can provide something that on your largest expense, you get to stack the hardest money, that takes not only away the inflation away, but actually lowers your mortgage payments every week. And people do it on their mortgage, they do it on their rent, they do everything. And essentially there's two main ways that they do this. Number one, most people actually don't know that their mortgage providers and credit card providers actually can take debit card payments to pay that debt off or to make those payments. So you can actually call them and request to do this via debit card. But there's an even easier way that if you just have a PayPal account, you can use their bill pay and add Fold as your payment method. You look up who your mortgage provider is, you look up who your credit card is, or your bill pays, any bills, and they will accept the Fold debit card. And that means you're going to be able to stack. It will put your stacking abilities on absolutes.
Overdrive.
Burners. It is wild. I currently did it, and a lot of this came from, we stay close to our users. We have a Discord of thousands and thousands of users who are constantly learning how to stack more sats with Fold, without Fold, everywhere. This is about, if you want to learn how to stack sats on your entire life and do this, Fold Discord is where to go. And this hack came from a user in there who said, "Hey guys, this is what I figured out." We saw people doing that, and then we put out a thing saying, here's a hack out there, and now it's absolutely blown up, and people are earning 1%, 2%, 3%, 4% back on their mortgage, which is incredible to see.
That's awesome.
It's epic.
Yeah.
Let's talk Lightning for a second. How do you envision Fold in the future being integrated with Lightning? What are your thoughts on the Lightning network at this stage?
Let's go back to, we stopped the story of where Fold we kind of shut down for a while, and we kicked it up again with rewards. But we also in that time said, hey, there's another opportunity. Bitcoin as a means of payment, as a medium of exchange, there's a totally different thing happening now. There's this thing called the Lightning Network that was very, very early days. That when the old product that you'd use, you'd send an on-chain payment to Fold, you'd wait 10 minutes for it to confirm. We would then send you a gift card. You wouldn't get any cashback rewards from it. You would sometimes even get hit with a fee for the on-chain transaction fee, and it just really wasn't working in that context. But then we saw Lightning. We saw this potentially can change the entire thing. It can make it instant. It can actually remove the entire fee structure in between. And if we can do that, merchants now would it would free up merchants to then give rewards directly to users. And it makes Bitcoin infinitely usable in a big way. And so we were very early on, and we decided to create, hey, let's try. We had a goal. Let's bring down the Lightning Network. Let's just try to do it. This is early days. So we launched a thing called Lightning Pizza. One of our lead developers, he realized that we had this relationship into to be able to submit orders into Domino's, directly into the Domino's ordering UI. And so we said, hey, let's put up a Lightning wallet and a Lightning payment processing system, and then submit orders directly into Domino's via a Domino's gift card. And now anybody in the US can buy Bitcoin or buy a Domino's pizza over the Lightning Network and have it delivered to them. We launched this thing, and the way we launched it is we airdropped Domino's pizzas under the name of Satoshi Nakamoto all over the country. And so people were going to
awesome.
Domino's and picking up I am Satoshi, and it was amazing. But what we found was we didn't bring down the Lightning Network, but we brought down all the wallets at the time. And at the time, it was like Blue Wallet was really the only one out there. And the wallets just completely just like broke down. Liquidity issues, channel issues, connection, all of that. It was like, okay, we have a lot to go and do on the infrastructure side. And so we then brought it into Fold, and we just said, hey, this is a way better experience, even with all the problems, a way better experience of using Bitcoin than an on-chain experience for any kind of retail setting. And so we actually shut down our on-chain payments. We said we're not going to accept those anymore. We went 100% Lightning. So right now you can go into Fold, you can buy gift cards via your Lightning wallet and do that today, and you'll earn rewards back. And the problem was at those days is like, to do anything with Lightning, you had to not only be the infrastructure, you had to actually provide the customer experience, and you had to make sure that everything was being safe, strong uptime, no one was running off with funds and all of that. And it was really not a simple thing. Like, to run Lightning infrastructure means you have a developer who has the key to all your Bitcoin. It changes the calculus of, you don't have a CFO and a CTO now. That's the same person. You've got to trust and have a ton of security around making sure that's right. You also need to be the infrastructure provider and the end service provider to customers. So that was always the thing that we learned, is like, hey, at the end of the day, what is Fold? Are we going to be the one introducing Bitcoin and Lightning to as many people as possible, or are we going to go and build on the infrastructure level and do that? Because both those jobs were huge. Today, if you want to do a payment service, like, you're not going to build a payment processor and then provide an end user app. You use a payment processor, provide the app, or you build a payment processor and get apps to build on you. And in the early days, you just had to do so much. And for a startup, you have to really be really serious about where you're putting your time and effort. We were 5 people or so at that time. And so we ultimately said, hey, we're going to stay on the consumer side. But what we need to do is continue to stay true to what we said initially, is get as many people accumulating and exposed to Bitcoin as possible as job number one. And now that we've done that, we have over 500,000 people who have earned on our platform with us. We're growing every single day. And now these users are coming to us who were only credit card users, are now saying, hey, when's the Lightning integration? Hey, how do I set up a Lightning wallet? Hey, how do I set up self-custody? And just now, I'd say just in this last year, I can look back and say to my team, we don't need to go build that ourselves. We actually now have a really mature and incredible landscape of other service providers that are out there that Fold can count on, that to be, number one, actually work, to be safe, and to provide a good user experience for our users, for 500,000 people who want to use this. Now that infrastructure is there, which it can't be underestimated how important that is, to have a maturing infrastructure layer and consumer interest and demand at that level. Because once you have both of those together, that's when hyper growth really starts to happen. And that was only true in the last, I would say really in the last 6 to 8 months. That's when the things really started to change. And so for Fold, we decided to say, hey, we're going to continue with our accumulation hypothesis. And now that we have the infrastructure there, we get to have a wonderful, our 2023 roadmap really gets to look very interesting. And that means Lightning gets to come inside, the commingling of Bitcoin services with traditional payment services now get to blend in ways they never have before. And that's only possible because now Fold gets to partner and with companies that have built incredible tools at the infrastructure layer. That just wasn't even an option before.
I agree with you, Will. I think there's a lot of people that are sleeping on how exponential the growth on the Lightning Network is going to be once we've kind of crossed the Rubicon of liquidity and infrastructure build out. Because when you think about back to incentives, you think about just merchants having access to instantaneous, permissionless, globally interoperable settlement, even just with each other, let alone users. How are you going to stop this? Honestly, I mean, it has the potential to be a massive deal, and I think a lot of us have been.
Why would you
like
want to stop it? You know, there's no incentive there to want to stop it unless you are, somebody sitting at the Fed maybe, or feeling like you're getting a little bit too much heat from these nerds.
And
I think it has the potential
it's not just one thing. Like we always like to say, okay, Lightning, what that does is it removes the intermediary for on payment networks, so it brings down the cost for merchants to accept payments. That is very true. It also reduces fraud in almost 95% of cases. And so in the fintech world, the thing that is true, if you saw it, the companies that solve for fraud are the companies that win, because it doesn't matter how good your product is. The sophistication of the current fraud environment is so good, and there is so much money in it and so much opportunity that if you do not solve that, you get completely wiped off. Your margins get completely eaten away. You're done. But if you can solve for that, you can build on a much stronger surface. So what you start to see are financial companies where fraud departments alone and the amount of money spent on fraud is sometimes eats up to 40-50% of your margins already. And that's not that's just keeping you safe. That's not even saying you're going to get hit with losses also. And so you're, number one, compressing the margin that retailers get to route around traditional payment networks. You're protecting against fraud. You're also creating inherent global markets from day one. So now we're looking at, and as our society is changing, right? So you look at younger generation, they are growing up in ways that their social networks are inherently global and cross-border. Like they're playing games with people who live in wherever the hell they do. Social networks are not just small town. These are the people right around me. Social networks are way broad. What that means is you need to have payment networks that are also able to facilitate those relationships as those people grow into financial maturity. So it's hard to imagine, like you said, number one, it's too good for too many people. And it's only bad for very specific types of people that only have really blunt force instruments to try to stop it. And so we're going to see that. We're going to see the regulation, the classification of Bitcoin as purely as an asset, or the funds transfer, travel rules, things like this. Things will try to slow it down, but the incentives are so strong and so aligned with the cultural drift of where we are that solve problems for companies, for merchants, for end users are too significant at this point to stop. And all we're waiting on is the infrastructure to mature, and things like, it can't be underestimated, things like Cash App point of sale systems turning on, millions of merchants being able to have access to accept Bitcoin payments with zero downside to doing so. It's just incredible what the opportunity is.
Every time, the Trojan horse meme has been beaten to death, but it really, really is what's going on here. You think about all these terminals that Cash App has done with Square. Mm-hmm. These are just Trojan horses being trotted straight out into the town square. And it's happening, man. It's crazy. And then the interoperability, which we've talked about already, it's just, there are so many layers to this. It's so hard to truly understand until you've kind of studied this thing for years. And honestly, I don't think I can say I 100% do ever, because there's so much more to learn. There's always a new thing.
That's why you got to start a podcast, just to think about it all the time, because it keeps going.
I just remember Dan's got the block clock behind him. When I plugged mine in last year, the liquidity on the Lightning Network was 3,600 Bitcoins, if I remember right, somewhere around that. I just looked at it today. It's 5,100. Yeah. That's a massive amount of liquidity added to that marketplace for trading Bitcoin around in a year. It's just an exponential thing, man. It's going.
And where the conviction grows is when you recognize there's no competition. I'm going to recite the words I read a second ago that I jotted down where you were talking. What else is going to compete on instantaneous, permissionless, global settlement? Right? I mean, this is where my bullishness gets out of control sometimes on Bitcoin and the layers being built above it. Is there's absolutely nothing competing in this space. Once something else starts competing, I'll start paying attention. But this thing is as lone of a wolf as it can possibly be.
Yep.
And then when you see how well the puzzle piece fits with the needs of the 21st century
and then
global economy, it's like
you watch what Ethereum's doing and think like it might have been a competitor if they didn't do so much stupid shit and divert down so many empty dark alleys that are complete dead ends. Yeah, it's got no competition, man.
Well, I'm going to close with the question you probably don't prefer, which we rarely ask too, but I feel like maybe it's the 312 compelling me to ask it. Where do you think we are right now? Like if you're to size up where we're at in the Bitcoin cycle, we're at, I don't know, we're not on that metric for the block clock. I think we're around 16,000, November of 2022. If you had to play out the next 3 years, what's your kind of projection on where we're at?
I think we're going to still see some fallout. There's no doubt what just happened here is, it gets to throw off all the veils of, institutions are coming or all this stuff. Like we don't need to rely, like at the end of the day, what this does is pull down to the basics, what we're here for, first principles. We get to wipe away all the memes, the hype memes, just the bull memes that go away. And just like at the end of the day, what are we talking about? Like you just, read back of like, think about what we're talking about here. Cash final, decentralized, peer-to-peer, global. Like nothing exists in this world like this. And not only that, all of its competitors are debasing themselves at the most tremendous rate right now. Whether you talk about just shitcoin world or fiat world, both of them are increasingly showing that they are not competitors on almost any one of these things. And all they can do is that they have some blunt force instruments. Shitcoin world has immense marketing power and dollars behind that has wreaked tons of damage, not only on Bitcoin as understand it in the world, but also with pushing people down a bad path. And then fiat culture, they do have the power of regulations, and who knows what the hell the back and forth between Fed fighting inflation, all that's going to actually be. But at the end of the day, the bull case remains of what Bitcoin is. And so I'd say at this point, we're going to be still knocking around. We're going to be knocking around these lows. We might even hit a little bit lower, I think, over the next few weeks and months. But where we're at right now, we've flushed out almost all of our main competition from just this space overall. I'm going to take the Lynn Alden approach of even if Bitcoin, just this space, achieves where we were not only 10 months ago, but Bitcoin has retaken its crown as the centerpiece of this and the central focus of all our brothers and sisters in the shitcoin world, and we actually come back to this space, we will achieve all-time highs even just from that. It shouldn't be underestimated how much time and financial value was just being dispersed into this other world. And if we're able to actually bring it back and actually corral that within Bitcoin and start building the circular economy that we were talking about, we're going to grow much, much faster than ever. And this clown world that we're talking about is not ending, where it's actually accelerating. And we like to talk about clown world and shitcoin world, but just in general, where we're at, Bitcoin is only going to be a more powerful tool that is realized by more and more people for various reasons, whether you're living in Argentina right now and experiencing absolutely tremendous hyperinflation, or you are just trying to build a savings account for your family in the United States in a way that just has never worked for you. Bitcoin is going to reveal itself and its superpowers more and more to more people. And that is one thing that I know is going to continue. And so where the hell we're going in a year, 3 years, it doesn't really matter to me. I think the most important thing is staying alive, and both as an individual and with your family, but also the businesses that you run. And we're all going to end up in a good spot. Like it's going to be all right. So I hate price predictions. We're going to 100K easy. We're retaking all-time highs, no doubt, but there's so much more in between, and that we're going to have to get through that. To me, that's where I focus primarily.
Yeah. We respect that answer because I would take the same side myself. Like, you just can't put a number on this. It seems likely it'll do the same thing it's done the last 12, 13 years, but the Fed tightening things can really throw a wrench into this.
We have a halving in a year and a half,
Yeah.
We have just seen that people were selling paper Bitcoin in absolute tremendous, volumes.
Yeah.
We have flushed out.
You can buy rep Bitcoin for like $3,000 a Bitcoin right now if you guys are interested.
Great deal. You can buy some GBTC also at 45% discount. Like, all of these things that we're just taking our attention away and taking real financial capital away from being accumulated within Bitcoin, that cannot be underestimated. And then you add the halving coming up as well during this. Like, this is the time to pile in. This is like when I tell my brother and my friends, and I always am pretty, level-headed with them, because I know that you have to be ready to get in this space. I've learned enough that you don't head-on convince people. That's not something
100%.
You're not. This is not a thing that you also, just for your own family and friends, is to say mortgage the house, YOLO into the whole thing. Like, that's just not how we win. The Bitcoiners don't want adoption to happen that way. And so the one thing I do know is that in times like this is the time when stacks are made. Like, this is every single cycle. This is what, anyone, when you look at people and you're like, oh my God, that's a whale, or how to, they have way more Bitcoin. This is the moment where those people stacked diligently and responsibly, and that's what put them in that position to come. This is exactly the type of moment when it just seems absolutely hopeless. And at the same time, when nothing has changed for the bull case for Bitcoin, it still remains intact. And so this is the time to keep your head down, mind your fiat job, use good Bitcoin companies and services that are aligned with your interests. And again, just stay alive. And this is you're going to be surprised. This is where that thing of like feeling like you're in Groundhog Day. My brother asked, like, should I go? And I'm like, this is the moment where you're going to surprise yourself and look back of saying, holy shit, I'm so glad that I made this opportunity now. And I took some confidence and went in.
Amen.
Wow. You've said so many good little quips throughout this podcast. I have no idea which one we're going to pick for the beginning, but thanks for giving us a variety.
Hand off to yourself and Fold as we close here.
Thank you, man. Thank you. We appreciate you all. Again, Bitcoin grows because we keep building, we keep talking, we get smarter and better, and just the signal continues to spread. So love the show, and let's just keep our heads down the bear market and keep kicking ass.
Will do.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate you.
Thanks.